Hello and welcome to this Gluware overview video. I'm Michael Howe, VP of Product Marketing. This video is targeted towards those who are about to get started with Gluware. So maybe you're jumping into the test drive, our virtual lab, or going to start a free trial, or maybe getting started or planning a proof of concept POC to evaluate Gluware in your own lab. So with that, let's jump in and give you an overview and jump into some of the deep technical details as well. So at a high level, what is Gluware? Gluware is an intelligent network automation solution. We are a pure software layer. That's the intention is to bring software control to your multi-vendor, multi-domain network. So in terms of what we automate, as I mentioned, we're a multi-vendor. We're at 30 plus operating systems. We're multi-domain, so we're automating the LAN, the WAN, the campus, the data center. With our 4.0 announcement end of 2020, we got into automating cloud by leveraging Terraform adapters and automate the major public clouds. We are able to automate the brownfield. So brownfield is that existing network you have that is mostly CLI driven. We're also able to automate modern architectures, which are API driven, like software-defined WAN controllers and others. And as I mentioned, cloud. We are an intent-based platform. So in this presentation, we're going to get fairly deep into what that means. But basically, when you think about defining an intended configuration state or a business level intent, the Gluware Orchestration Engine is able to make that change happen for you. You don't have to build a lot of the details in terms of how it happens. Gluware takes care of that. Gluware is used throughout the life cycle of the network. So it can be used from the deployment of new devices through the onboarding, the inventory, the assessment, all the way on through lifecycle tuning, security, optimizing, performing end-of-life, end-of-sale, and PCERT analysis, and software upgrades, and more. So when you do kind of look at that right, Gluware helps you achieve compliance on your network, automate the network to achieve better security, enable continuity in terms of performance and keeping the network up and running. And having Gluware in place enables you for agility to tackle the next challenge that the business throws at you. And the last point on the left-hand side is around beyond the application suite that we deliver, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. We also deliver an IDE, an integrated development environment called Gluware Lab that Gluware uses, but also our partners and even our advanced customers use to customize Gluware to even some of the most unique use cases. So we'll talk about that as well. So this is, we kind of refer to it as the marketecture at a very high level, like what is Gluware? And I turned on my pen so I can kind of keep some focus here for you. Gluware is in this middle box here, which is built on basically the Intelligent Orchestration Engine and a suite of applications that are delivered for turnkey automation. So when you're using Gluware and the application suite, it is really a no-code platform. You're not required to learn any programming language or really any data modeling. You don't have to learn any of that. The applications deliver that for you, and we're going to talk about what each of the apps bring. What you do need to still kind of code or build, if you want to call it coding, it's not really coding, is the configuration policy. So whatever you are trying to automate, you do bring that to Gluware, you onboard it or you define it in Gluware as your intended policy, and then Gluware automates it. So you're kind of bringing your operational policies, your configuration policies, the compliance requirements you have, and those things are integrated into Gluware and then automated. In terms of what we automate, when you think of the customer network, I talked about it a little bit already, but we're at 30 plus operating systems. We automate the traditional network being CLI driven of routers, switches, load balancers, firewalls, WAN optimizers, wireless LAN controllers, and more, as well as API endpoints, be it SD-WAN controllers like Cisco SD-WAN or Meraki, or API endpoints that are public cloud oriented. Now, when you think about how Gluware is delivered, as I said, it's pure software, and it is software as a service, but it is delivered in two different ways. Gluware Pro is our SaaS offering hosted in AWS. It's geared for medium to large customers, up to 2,000 devices that you're managing. And we administrate it. You install Gluware Secure Gateway on your prem, and it's all operated from the cloud. The other offering we have is called Gluware Enterprise. And we kind of refer to it as Gluware Your Way. But in general, we're delivering Gluware Enterprise typically as a set of virtual machines that you deploy into your environment. Those virtual machines become your primary orchestration server, your backup orchestration server, as well as leverage our multi-engine architecture that enable you to deploy zone engine servers out closer to groups of nodes for distributed performance. So those zone engines are how we scale, and we will talk about that a little bit going forward as well. So Gluware is very flexible in how we're deployed and is scalable to tens of thousands of devices. We have not actually hit an upper limit on scale at this point, and we continue to expand and deliver on networks of in the tens of thousands of counts. So moving on. So this slide is intended to dive deeper into kind of the solution stack and understanding what's happening within Gluware Control and why the orchestration engine is so powerful. So let's take a look at that. What does the orchestration engine deliver? Well, first and foremost, we are a data model driven platform. What that means is everything we ingest into the network, we wrap in data models. We then treat those data models programmatically. So we're essentially enabling programmatic control of even CLI-based networks. And we are able to do that through the vendor adapter layer. So the vendor adapter layer is where we teach or train our engine to understand the CLI and semantic of the underlying operating system. So once we're able to speak that language of Cisco's iOS or Juniper's Junos or Arista or Palo Alto Panos or F5 and on, we teach it how to speak, and then through package management, through the various packages we load, we continue to onboard the intelligence into our system, how to inventory those systems, how to perform operating system upgrades, and how to perform configuration management. So we'll talk about that, but one of the nice things to understand about Gluware is that we're a very modular system. Once the framework is in place, while you're running Gluware, even in between releases, we can add or enhance support for multi-vendors. So continuing the conversation here, it is key that we are data model driven. So therefore, those data models reside in the databases. And so we have the built-in data models. Databases. You don't have to learn database query languages. You don't have to learn SQL. We have the underlying relational and non-relational databases, and we have the engines that process the data. So these engines enable us to do things like discovery and do intent-based provisioning. So next is we have the integrated web server, and this provides services up to the application layer, which we're going to talk about in a second. We have the messaging bus, which allows communication with our platform, very deep level logging. This is one thing customers really love about Gluware, is the transparency and seeing exactly what Gluware is doing at the CLI or at the API level. We have robust authentication services with support for things like LDAP and Radius. We recently added support for things like SAML and OAuth and two-factor, and have very robust security and authentication into Gluware. Gluware has a powerful scheduling engine, so if you want to schedule audits, drifts, provisioning, reporting, all of it can be built in and then scheduled for periodic-based activity. From a communication and notification standpoint, we have an integrated email server that will allow you to email out reports and messages and other things that you're scheduling. We also have syslog integration where Gluware can catch syslog messages and associate those with things like configuration changes. Gluware is a multi-tenant architecture. We call tenants organizations, and it's a multi-user architecture with full role-based access control. So you are able to control your users and what they're able to do with Gluware as a platform, and you're able to define organizations so you can logically divide, let's say, your data center devices or your WAN devices or campus devices and so on and so forth. Other components of the orchestration engine, if you're using our OS manager for operating system upgrades, we have integrated file servers that can be distributed. So that's why you see kind of like multiple boxes there. You can distribute file servers out closer to devices for better performance. The way Gluware is highly scalable, as I was touching on the last slide, is that we have a multi-engine architecture. So your primary orchestration engine is going to have, by default, 2 engines running. Those engines are provisioning engines, I should say, that perform the jobs like discovery and audits and config modeling and others. You can also install and deploy zone engine servers. So this is where you're pushing out Gluware out, let's say provisioning power of Gluware out closer, more distributed in your network for higher performance and higher scale. And as I mentioned, I was going to go a little bit further into what intent-based means. So with an intent-based provisioning architecture, with Gluware, you're defining an intended state, the policy or the network configuration that you want to be on the network. Gluware will read the current state. We ingest that into a data model. We then compare it to the desired state, and we will render on the fly what is required to achieve that desired configuration. This includes removing statements that are out of policy. So we are able to recognize the things that shouldn't be there, things that are missing, or things that need to be corrected. We'll render the proper configuration and interact with the device to apply that configuration. And then there's a full verification. So this is where you have the verification cycle to ensure you're in that intended state. So let's move on a little bit here. At the application layer, Gluware resides at, really, it is a full browser-based app suite. And when you're operating, when you launch Gluware Control, you then navigate through the applications. So let's just run through them really quickly because we're going to go deeper in it. But Device Manager, where you're performing discovery and inventory. Drift and Audit, where you're doing monitoring and assessment and auditing. Your data insights are provided by the dashboard framework and the new Data Explorer application introduced in Gluware 4.1. You have OS Manager to automate operating system upgrades and config modeling to automate configuration changes and workflows for process automation. And then we have the Glue API, which is our published REST API. When you want to integrate or work with Gluware programmatically, you'd consume or work through our REST calls into the platform. So let's build this out and just tie in the last piece of it. From the last slide I was already talking about, you bring in your config policy. Gluware does not restrict you what you want to automate. Gluware enables you to automate anything the vendor supports in its operating system and its configuration capabilities. So you bring what you want to automate into the Gluware platform. You also can define your own audits along with using standard audits, and you bring your own processes and you automate those with Gluware. On the bottom side of the network, this is where I talked about it already. With our 30+ vendor adapters, we automate traditional networks, API endpoints, and public cloud. So with that, we'll move on. Hopefully that gave you a good sense of kind of the solution stack. The way it's implemented is slightly different in our AWS version, where it's more cloud native, or the version packaged in virtual machines that are installed on-prem. But we can get into that as you are making your decision which platform you're going for in your Gluware deployment. So let's take a little bit more detailed run through the applications and kind of how you get started with Gluware, or the use cases that you achieve with each application. So as I mentioned, dashboards. Dashboards, a new framework introduced in Gluware 4.0, so the end of 2020. Very powerful way to visualize your underlying information. And it's action-oriented, meaning anything that's being visualized, you can click on it and navigate into the UI and take action. So if you see a failed audit in a dashboard, you can click on it and see exactly the details. If you see devices that were undiscoverable, you can click on them and it'll navigate you into Device Manager to figure out what happened. So very powerful insight, and provides that visualization for reporting and communication, and as I was mentioning, the navigation into Gluware. The new application introduced in Gluware 4.1 is called Data Explorer. This gives you the full ability to take underlying data from Gluware in the databases, use our template editor, and fully build custom reports. It has an integrated real-time report viewer to render that data and see it in real time and make decisions. You then can also schedule your various reports, and once the templates are created, not only can you generate the reports out of Data directly from Data Explorer, but those templates are available in the other applications that I'm going to go through as we move on here. So Data Explorer is really key for those data-driven insights and reporting outside of Gluware. Device Manager is usually one of the starting places within the Gluware app suite. This is where you're performing that onboarding, that network discovery, that ingesting of the underlying infrastructure. Again, with 30 plus operating systems, we are able to interrogate these devices. We don't require SNMP. We have a library, a discovery library. We're interrogating to a deep degree, even pulling operational state and other information now. So you get that real-time inventory that you are then able to do actually a lot of powerful analysis with. You can look and understand how many operating system versions you have deployed. You can search across all your config files if you're trying to find an IP address. You can perform ad hoc queries and look at, can query the config, or you can even query the operational state through Device Manager. Moving on, usually the next step, application suite, is using our config drift and audit application. Drift gives you the ability to monitor config change. You can schedule this, or you can trigger it with syslog integration. So if we get a syslog message indicating that someone has gone into config mode, we can trigger a drift, and then through the app you can see exactly what has changed, who and when. We also have a powerful audit engine. In the audit engine, it's code free. All you need is your CLI and some regex, and you can build very powerful audits to look for required configuration or forbidden configuration. And this is used across standards-based audits like PCI and HIPAA and NIST, as well as company policy-based audits or even ad hoc audits. If you find out like a specific vulnerability is caused by a specific configuration, you can search across all your devices for that configuration to see if you are exposed to that vulnerability. OS Manager gives you the ability to plan and schedule and execute operating system upgrades, patches, and even your primary image, your ROM-MON image, and more. So it kind of takes the hassle and the pain out of that kind of traditionally painful process of executing operating system upgrades. And it's really key to have this in your arsenal as you're faced with additional vendor vulnerabilities that are coming out, forcing you into more upgrades than you would like. You need to be able to automate this process and roll out upgrades reliably when you are faced with those vulnerabilities in the network. Config modeling, we kind of refer to it as our superpower. It's really the key differentiator of Gluware in terms of things that no one else can really do in the industry, in that we are able to deconstruct a monolithic CLI config file and break it up into individual features that are ultimately defined in data models within our platform. The user doesn't have to know it. As long as you understand the configuration that you want across various features like SNMP or AAA or QoS, you define it in Gluware as a policy. Behind the scenes, Gluware is wrapping it in data modeling and is able to intelligently and in a declarative and idempotent way provision it down to the network layers extremely reliably. So you can automate as much of the configuration or as little as you want. Oftentimes our users start with things that are kind of hot or urgent, like moving to SNMP v3 or rolling out a new AAA policy, or implementing a new QoS policy as well. So the other piece I would mention with config modeling is we do have a powerful workflow called Intelligent Model Discovery. And with Intelligent Model Discovery, we're able to point Gluware at a reference device like a branch router or top of rack switch and actually ingest the entire configuration and dynamically create automation policy. So with that, you have the very powerful ability to automate network configurations. Workflows are where you're kind of getting more into process automation, so things that take multiple steps, either in design or operation or troubleshooting or certain planning steps, can be fully automated into a workflow. Workflows are also sometimes where API integrations take place to interface with a IPAM or talk to a CMDB or open a ticket in ServiceNow, that sort of thing. And so with that, just to talk APIs, I mentioned already we have the Glue API, which is our published RESTful API. We also have a powerful ability to onboard any published API and make calls and interact with those. So I mentioned things like ServiceNow or Remedy or even Ansible, and we have modules for Ansible as well, where if you're doing simple automation with Ansible, you can programmatically trigger Gluware to look at an audit or a drift or other components where Gluware can be complementary to some basic changes with Ansible. So moving on, we've mainly talked about and focused on this aspect right here, which is Gluware control, and it's largely used by your NetOps, your network operations folks, your network engineers, and they are consuming our suite of applications and they're implementing automation at scale in the network. However, it always is the case where no matter what you build into a product as a vendor, customers have unique requirements and unique needs. And so the question always becomes, how does a vendor keep up with my unique needs or the changing nature of my requirements? And the answer is Gluware Lab. Gluware Lab is something that we've made available in the marketplace to our customers who have, the capability for kind of what we would consider low code. All you have to do is have a skill set of some lightweight JSON data modeling, a little bit of JavaScript programming or business logic, kind of at the script level, and the whole environment is there for you. It's a full-blown IDE, and we have wizards and other things that help you in the process of building things like custom network features, workflows and scripts, which are more of the process or autonomous type things that you want to run, as well as I talked about APIs and integrations. So we have a full REST development kit, as well as example REST packages that are already there for a lot of the common integrations. And our either Gluware or one of our partners can build, customization for you. Or at this point, many of our advanced customers are driving Gluware Lab themselves, customizing and extending Gluware and performing integrations. And then through Gluware Lab, you have the full ability to develop the feature and do functional testing. Then you publish the feature into your distribution center, and then you load the package dynamically into your environment, and you're off and running. So it does follow the full kind of CI/CD integration model or continuous integration, where you can customize and not really have be dependent on the vendor for certain aspects of customization and integration that you would like to see. So it's a very powerful addition to the overall Gluware solution with Gluware Lab. So what does this all look like? Well, at Gluware, we understand that you're going to have other things in your orchestration and automation layer, but what you can look forward to with Gluware is you can minimize or eliminate as much of the manual processes as you can. You can consolidate and or eliminate some of the legacy NCCMs, the network config and change products that have been out there for 20 plus years that haven't adopted modern technology. They're not data model driven. Many of them are kind of UIs on top of scripts that are very rigid, are not doing robust pre-checks and post-checks and communicating intelligently with the network layer. Many of those NCCMs are not modernizing where they're talking to API infrastructures or cloud. So, what we're looking at or what we offer customers is the ability to kind of begin to consolidate at the O&A layer and leverage Gluware across your CLI-driven infrastructure, your API-driven infrastructure. And as your NetOps teams are required to spin up and manage network infrastructure and in the clouds like AWS and others, enabling them with a product like Gluware that allows them to very quickly and easily spin up predefined or standard deployment and configuration. And then with Gluware, as I mentioned already, you have the full ability to integrate with other components in the management plane. ServiceNow, Infoblox IPAMs, Get, code repositories, Netbox, external source of truth, fog bugs, and other types of systems. So with that concludes the overview. Hopefully it gives you a good technical understanding of Gluware and understand some differentiation. For more information across our platform, please visit gluware.com. There's lots of information and other tutorials up there. You can request a demo directly through gluware.com. If you're not already in the motion, you can request a test drive where we set you up with a virtual lab. You can request a free trial and test in your own environment using Gluware Pro, or you can engage with our sales team and request a full proof of concept, and we'll support you in your evaluation of Gluware and ensure it can meet your unique automation challenges. Thanks for your time and interest in Gluware.